Hi, my name is Mina Aishak, and I'm with CYC here. We are at St. Basil's Parish, the Indian Orthodox Church in Long Island, New York. We are here today to discuss our sister Orthodox Church in India and Christianity in India. I have here Tenny Thomas, one of the representatives of the Indian Orthodox Church. So we know that there are many religions in India and many different sects of types of religions in India. Where does Christianity fit?
Christianity, whether you believe it or not, is the third largest religion in India. Now, of course, in terms of numbers, I would say around 24 million of the 1.2 billion people in India are Christians. So it's a minority. So you say 2.4% of the entire population of India are Christians. Of them, I would say a good number, up to 17 million, would be Catholics. And then you have another 7 million, of which 3.5 million would be Orthodox, and the other would make up all the various Protestant and non-denominational groups within the Christian demographics of India. So it's a minority, and the Orthodox Christians are what I call a minority in the minority of the population of India.
So of the many people in India, the Orthodox Christians represent a very small part.
3.5 million compared to 1.2 billion is significantly small. But I think it's still a good number of people, vibrant, living, ancient. So even though 3.5 million is very little compared to the big picture and compared to a lot of other churches, I still think it's a significant number.
So which of the apostles brought Christianity to India and were responsible for the flourishing of Christianity in India?
Now, anytime you mention Christianity and India, the first person that everyone thinks of is none other than Apostle Thomas. Tradition is that he reached India in AD 52. He came to the coast of today modern Kerala, and he converted the Brahmin families. He established the tradition is that we call 7.5 church. And people ask, how can you establish a half church? Because the word half in Malayalam is ara. And that has nothing to do with half. It is just for the fact that the church was built in a land given by the king, because anything that the land given by the king has the word aramana related to it. So the land given by the king, and so the church that got built there happened to be the land donated by the king, and so they say 7.5 church, but it's more like 8 churches, and some of them are very much, you might not see the original church at all, but the continuation of the church. For example, one of the major pilgrim centers for the Indian Orthodox Church in Kerala is a place called Niranam, a place that he actually established a church, and it's still there, and it's one of the most prominent and ancient of the Indian Orthodox Church, dedicated to the name of the Holy Theotokos.
Okay.
So it is St. Thomas who brought Christianity to India. There is speculation whether he actually came or not, and being a church historian, I want to paint both sides of the story. The one thing is that of all the prolific Syriac writers in the world, the one name that everyone is aware of is Saint Ephrem, 4th century saint, prolific writer. And in his work, the Edessene, the hymns on Edessa, that's where he lived. Edessa was on the outskirts of the Roman Empire, the flourishing center of what is Syriac Christianity. And he talks about the presence of the tomb of St. Thomas in India. and so many other saints. Saint John Chrysostom, Jerome talks about it. But the most interesting feature, which historians associate it as a legend, is in Eusebius's Ecclesiastical History. Chapter 13, verse 1, talks about the conversion of King Abgar the Black, who had some sort of skin disease. This is the only time we know that a king writes to Jesus. He wrote to Jesus saying, "Come, I hear that the Jews are persecuting you. I hear that they want to kill you. I have a kingdom that's big enough for you, my people, and for me," and invites Christ. And Eusebius writes in his history that Jesus actually wrote back. I mean, the only place where we have something where Jesus actually wrote back through a messenger saying, "Unfortunately, I have other things to do because I've come to fulfill the will of my Father. I cannot come to you right now." But he sends his disciple, and they say it is Judas Thomas, sends him there, heals him, and they convert to Christianity. And the history mentions about how Thomas moves on to the eastern boundaries of Edessa, goes off to India, converts. So there are so many legends associated with Saint Thomas. There is another king by the name of Gondophorus, that Saint Thomas being, he has the name Didymus, or twin. So they say that he could have been, so he was also a carpenter, and he reaches the king and tells him, "Look, give me, I can help you build your palace." And the king gives him a lot of money, and what Saint Thomas is really doing is using the money to help the poor. And the king's brother dies, and the king doesn't see any palace being built at all, puts Saint Thomas in prison. The king's brother dies and goes to heaven and sees a beautiful palace constructed with all the help that Thomas has been doing with the poor people. The brother comes back to the king and says, "Look, you've imprisoned him for the wrong reason. A beautiful palace has been built in heaven." And they say that the king releases Thomas, and there's a conversion. And a lot of times historians put the legend of Gondophorus, King Gondophorus, as a myth or a folklore. But in fact, over the past several years, they have found to be a historical figure of King Gondophorus that ruled northern parts of India, and coins that dates back to the Roman Empire are actually found within North India, Afghanistan, and all that. So it is, there is more clarity to who this king was.
It's really a very wonderful, rich history of Christianity in India. Is there a certain geographical location where Christianity really predominates in India, or is it spread pretty much all throughout the land?
In modern India, when you talk about Christianity, there are a few states that come to mind. Kerala is one of them. It goes without saying that almost 40%, I think the only other state that might compete with Kerala in terms of Christian population might be Goa, a hugely Catholic population. Kerala, Goa, there is a presence of Christianity in Tamil Nadu, and then there is a great presence of Protestant Christianity on the northeastern part of India, among the states of Nagaland, Manipur. So but that Christianity is more non-denominational or Protestant influence. But Kerala, Goa are more traditional, Goa more Catholic. Of course, as I mentioned, of the 24 million or 25 million of India's population, 17 million are Catholics. So the predominant Christian denomination in India are Catholics.
So with that being said, knowing that there's persecution of Christians all throughout the world, would you say that something like that is happening in India?
Persecutions can be of several kinds. I need not tell you as a Coptic Christian what persecution is. In India, Christianity is persecuted because 70% of India's educational institutions and charitable institutions like hospitals are run by Christians. And so there is a feeling among fundamentalists, especially because 80% of India's population are Hindus, over 800 million people. So among the fundamentalists, when 70% of the country's educational and charitable institution, like, education is the very core of what makes a human who he or she is. So there is a feeling among the fundamentalists that Christian education, Christian institutions are actually there to convert people to Christianity. There is nothing like that. But you cannot educate a fundamentalist. It's hard. You can, but most of the time they do not think rationally. So to them, the only way to put an end to this is to destroy. So you hear reports of nuns massacred, missionaries burned, churches being devastated and things like that. You hear about that. But in my personal opinion, there is a different kind of persecution that happens in India, unfortunately. And as an Orthodox Christian, I feel that is the greatest persecution, which is the persecution from Christians snatching away Orthodox Christians. For example, what I call prosperity gospel, non-denominational evangelism, that, come to us and all your pains, all your sorrows, you have greener opportunities. If you come to us, you're guaranteed a trip to America, things like that. So prosperity theology has led to a lot of Indian Orthodox believers leaving the church. It's very unfortunate. There was a time during the time of one of the greatest saints of the Indian Orthodox Church, Saint Gregorios, who actually started a mission to convert locals who were untouchables to Orthodox Christianity. There were a significant number during the early days, and there was a movement to actually cater for them. Unfortunately, that has dwindled, and so even though there might not be persecutions in the sense of people being gunned down, as you are well aware, but there is persecution in the sense that people are denied the right to practice the faith. Churches are closed down, and there's so much of internal politics. So in that way, there is a bit of persecution to Christianity in India and to Orthodox Christianity in particular. And it's very unfortunate. Sometimes even there is no witness to the actual gospel of Christ. So persecution in that sense definitely goes on. And persecutions where people are killed for their faith also happens, but definitely not on the level of what we have seen in the recent past with the Coptic Orthodox Church. And as the sister church, as the Indian Orthodox Church, we want to extend our heartfelt support to our Coptic brothers and sisters, at this time of great trouble and grief. So our heart goes out to the Coptic Orthodox Church.
We thank you so much for that. And this is a time where having sister churches and prayers of our sister churches really does benefit both of us. How is the presence of the Indian Orthodox Church outside of the native land?
They always say that you can find, there is a joke among Indian, especially among Malayalis. Malayalis are those who come from Kerala, that you are more likely to find a Malayali even on the moon. So wherever Malayali has gone in search of jobs, which is mainly to the Persian Gulf, since 1965 to the United States of America, and to a lot of medical professionals, I mean doctors in particular, to the UK in the 60s, and in the recent past to Australia as well. So the church definitely has its presence in Australia, in New Zealand, in Malaysia, in Singapore, definitely in the Persian Gulf. We have a church in Yemen too, presence in South Africa. We have a presence in Kenya. I don't think we have anything in other parts of Africa as such. Then a great presence in the UK, and it goes without saying in North America, especially the United States and Canada. The church not only presence, but a significant presence in terms of wanting to establish a church, have a church of its own. And so the church has definitely grown leaps and bounds since the 60s and since the 70s, where the Holy Synod of the church decided that there should be what is called a diocese for outside Kerala. And so it has significantly grown. But in America, especially in America, it's significant because since 1965 there has been a migration of a lot of people to America. And I can say that in America, the one good thing is in the past 10 years, almost 30 young men and one woman have decided to give up their secular profession and actually come into ordained ministry. We have wonderful priests who have graduated from our seminary in India, like Father Thomas Paul, and who serve in this country. But there are men who were born and raised in this country who have held secular jobs, who decided to give that up. The church here is far more established and it has a better infrastructure. The coming forward of so many men and women to ministry is going to be helpful. And my sincere prayer is that pretty soon that we will hopefully establish a monastic community in this country, which is very much the backbone of the Orthodox Church, as you know.
How active are the youth in the Indian Orthodox Church, both in India and here in America, outside of the motherland?
They always say the youth are the citizens of the future, and they have a significant role they play in the life of the church. It goes without saying they're extremely active in India, here, all across. Now, we have different organizations that cater to the needs of what we call youth. We have something called MGOCSM, Mar Gregorios Orthodox Christian Student Movement. It's catered to young people who are in education, schools, colleges, and catered to their spiritual needs. And you have a unit established in most of the churches, most of the colleges. So people attend fellowships, Bible studies, various aspects of faith building and things through that. And every year there's an annual conference that happens from 26th of December to the 31st of December, somewhere in India. And 2 years ago, in 2008, we celebrated the centenary, 100 years of that organization. And that is extremely active here in America too. It is a very significant part of the spiritual life of the youth here in America. Now, there is something called the Youth League, Youth Forum in the church that's catered to young adults who are working, men and women. That is also extremely active. They do things on a grander scales. Symposium on church history, seminars on church history, learning about the various traditional architecture of the church, looking through various old writings, trying to print out-of-print books. So on a larger scale, because they're working youths, they can cater to that. The Youth League in America is not as organized as it is in India, because once young adult, married life, children, they are involved in the church, but unfortunately, I don't know why the Youth League has not had a footing here in America. So to cater to that, several years ago, there was a Fellowship of Orthodox Christians of the United States. It was called Focus. It was established to cater to young adults. And until November 2011, I was the director of that organization that caters to the married younger adults of the church. So it's extremely active and it's growing, but more things need to be done, because how do you keep the attention of kids who have gone off to college? How do you keep hold of them within the church, within the faith? So it's active, but it could be more. So we have to come up with being more innovative in these things.
Well, Tenny, we thank you so much for having us here, and we would like to welcome you in the future as a regular contributor to CYC, if you would allow. And we want to consider that this channel is open to not just the Coptic Church or the Coptic youth, but to all, our sister non-Copts as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Tenny and to St. Basil's Parish for having us today, learning about Christianity in India. Thank you.